In niche product areas, there's a lot of relationship building. And
Yes.
what a pre-sale does is it gives you this roadmap for building a relationship with your customer that deepens their lifetime value.
You're listening to the Traffic Handler Podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. My guest today is Claire Hunsaker of AskFlossie.com. We had a list of questions at the start of our talk, and the entire conversation took a massive organic bounce in 10 different directions. So forget about the list. This is a great conversation. Claire is a certified financial consultant with a lifetime of experience with retail and e-commerce. I could have hung out with Claire all day talking business and life and having fun. So I can already see that she'll be back on the show for episode part 2. But in the meantime, enjoy today's show. Power-packed, lots of good information. Don't shy away from this because it's finance, because Claire makes it interesting. So enjoy the show. So I'm here with Claire Hunsaker today, and even before we started recording, we started having fun. So today's going to be a really good episode about finance. And Claire's website is askflossie.com. We'll get into that, but we've got very specific questions. We're going to talk about money, which is a huge part of e-commerce, what to do when you have a bunch of it, what to do when you don't have a bunch of it, because there are ebbs and flows. And we're going to hit all the high points and maybe some of the dark matter too. So Claire, welcome.
Amy, thanks for having me. Let me tell you a little bit about me so that your listeners who are like, who is this financial lady, have some context. Yeah. I was raised by someone who was in retail for her entire career and spent most of my summers and afternoons merchandising and helping with marketing materials. And then my sister grew up to be an e-commerce seller, and I grew up to do digital marketing.
Yeah.
And after about 15 years in tech and getting a Stanford MBA, I decided that I was much more interested in personal finance. It had always been something that I care about, and I care a lot about, particularly how it impacts women. So Ask Flossie focuses on personal finance for single women. And as a part of that, different kinds of businesses and business structures fall into our purview because they're so important for developing income. And if you are profitable in e-commerce, you are a better person than me. I started an e-commerce store as my very first entrepreneurial enterprise in the summer of 2007, which was a great time to start a business, but broke even, learned a lot. It really got me passionate about the online space. And so while I am certainly not as expert in e-commerce, I am, as your listeners are, I am surrounded by it. I cannot get away from it. Yeah. But I focus mostly on how to build financial stability, how to build financial plans, and not just necessarily for the rich. We're all trying to get there. Most of us aren't there yet.
Yep, that's a true story. That's great. I love your background. I love, the brick and mortar retail, which is a totally different animal to e-commerce.
It
but
is.
Some of the bones are the same,
Yeah. Yeah. The bones are the same. The mentality is the same. The inventory will always get you.
Yeah. Yeah. Capitalizing inventory. I mean, we're getting ahead of the game right now, but let's say you've got a little bit of inventory, you sell it, it's at a profit, you made some money, but then you have to buy inventory, pay all your overhead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a crazy game.
I think cash management is one of the toughest things for e-commerce. It stuck out to me as one of the cases we studied at the business school at Stanford, that one of the fastest ways that large, quickly growing e-commerce companies get out over their skis is that they're not able to fund and manage inventory. And I think it's also true for a lot of people who are earlier in their journey. Learning how the inventory purchasing life cycles are different from the sales life cycles, and how that impacts your cash flow. And then as an owner, how that impacts what you take home it creates some real challenges for personal finance.
It really does. So are there tools, like just basic, Please don't say QuickBooks. Not a fan, but it is a tool. It's important.
I am more of a TurboTax person than a QuickBooks person. So I think there are some things to think about when it comes to cash flow management. And we do this in our house as well, because we don't have, my husband and I are both self-employed. We do not have even take home, we don't have a regular distribution. Yeah. So we do things like track what we pay in estimated taxes when the flows come in. Because it turns out that for a lot of people, the biggest payments that you're going to make aren't to your retirement fund or your inventory. They're going to be to the tax man. And if you can tack when you pay taxes and how much you pay to when the money comes in, you can even out a lot of what you have left over to live on. Yeah. And that can be beneficial to just planning groceries for, frankly, but also like getting some ability to see into what taxes are coming and putting a little bit of tying your personal cash flow with your tax payments can just create a lot of room. It changed our life in our house. Yeah. And I know that for if you're dealing with inventory cycles where it's going to be very dip and then up, it's going to that can help. And the IRS does allow you to tack your any estimated payments to when you earn. The idea is they want them to be as close as possible. So what TurboTax your accountant spits out, it's just a suggestion, but you can tack it to what you earn. You might have to prove it, but you should be able to prove it fairly readily.
Yeah, proving that would be the easy part. So like if let's say client business has a major capital expenditure for inventory, but we know that's enough inventory to carry for 2, 3, 6 months. So you can kind of spread out how the estimated taxes and the capital expenditure and interest on that loan, because chances are pretty good they didn't just out of their pocket shell out 6 figures or even a decent 5 figures for the.
Well, the interesting thing is that the government doesn't really care about when you shell out stuff on a monthly or quarterly basis as a business or as a as a personal income tax. What they care about is when you take income, because that's what they tax. And so like if you're going to shell out hundreds of thousands of dollars for inventory and then not run a profit where you take an income until you sell it, then you don't declare the tax until the income and subsequently the tax until the sale. And so that means that you can defer tax payments until you've got that income in your pocket. That's a reasonable thing to do.
That's very reasonable. And, I know with my accountant, he's always helping me with things like that. Like, what's reasonable and what makes sense and what can you do? And so that's a huge help.
I think, Amy, one other thing I wanted to touch on there is that you kind of suggested that, there's this very close interplay between an individual's finances and their business's finances. And that's not always even a good idea.
Oh, say more about that.
Yeah. So I think that there's, when we talk about business structures and we think about business structures, a lot of people get hung up on, do I need to be an LLC or an S Corp, or do I need, what do I need to be? Should I be a sole proprietorship? And that's actually less important than keeping your finances clean and separate. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, in your business, it allows you to drive to profitability much more cleanly and clearly, because you can see what's yours and what's the business and where's the profit really. Right. And then for your personal finance, it allows you to see, how are you doing? And creating real walls between those two things, I think even very early before, if you're just a sole proprietor, figuring out what you're selling to whom and what your AOV is, like, that's a really great, having that walled garden between personal finance and business finance is super important. Yep. And what that allows you to do is be less impacted by some of those flows. Yes. But it also might mean that that you have to put a little more rigor into how you're managing both your personal stuff and your business stuff.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And that wall, it has to be sacrosanct, like
Yeah.
separate credit and debit cards, separate, loans for personal or business. And
Yeah.
that's really key. So you mentioned entities. And so how do you make that decision? We're going to start a business. We're going to start as a sole proprietorship because we don't want the expense
Right.
of developing an entity to begin with. But how do you decide, it's time to go pro? Do I do an LLC or do I do an S Corp?
I think a lot of people pull that cord too early. It's when you look at like what LLC means, it means a limited liability company. And the important piece of that, the important words there are liability and company. Do you need liability protection that you can't get from business insurance? There's so many niche kinds of e-commerce insurance. There's even insurance for bloggers now. There's all these niche, inexpensive types of business insurance that are in the state of California much cheaper than getting an LLC.
Wow.
So the question is like, can you get your liability protection elsewhere? And do you need to take any kind of investment? So it might be, if you are going to be taking investment and working with banks, you probably are going to need to have some sort of business entity for them to work with. But on the flip side, if you're starting out, you're funding it yourself, you're going to put a couple of grand in, figure out how to make it work or build it up from, something very small. You don't need that overhead. Plus it can be very expensive. It can cost $1,000 if you're in the state of California to incorporate.
Yeah.
So, I really encourage people to start with one, being mindful about like, what are they protecting from a liability perspective? Like, what's your worst case scenario? For most people, losing their house is their worst case scenario because your IRAs and 401ks, your retirement accounts are protected.
Yes.
And so when liability comes into it, it's really like going to go after your car and your house.
Yeah.
So that's all the coverage you need, unless you've got other stuff going on in your business, if your business is big. So having that liability in place that covers where your business is and where your personal assets are, your unprotected personal assets are.
Yes.
And then doing it cheap and easy. I think, there's so many more important things in the early stages of a business than figuring out, business structure and getting an EIN and all of that. When you start hiring and start working with financing and requiring those things, it has a greater bit of overhead. It becomes important to incorporate at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And before we started today, you had mentioned that you think that, well, not you think that that insurance is underutilized. And I've never heard anybody say before, liability LLC versus insurance and consider that as an expense. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I think it's, we just all assume LLC is the way to go if we're serious. But sole proprietorships are very popular as a business structure. There's nothing wrong. It's got a lot of tax benefits from an income tax perspective because you get to declare all your expenses on your Schedule C.
Yeah.
And as someone who prepares taxes, I prepare a lot of taxes as a volunteer for lower income people, but a lot of them are self-employed. And my Lord, the Schedule C is my favorite thing. There is nothing I love as much as someone rolling in with 1099s and a list of their expenses.
That's great.
Yeah, because it's actually more preferential in a lot of ways than the W-2. You have to save for your taxes.
Yes,
but it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so it's worth talking to your accountant when those trade-offs to moving to an LLC or S Corp where you'll get a K-1. There's some trade-offs there, but that's, early on, embrace the Schedule C. It is your BFF.
It's your friend. That's
good. Oh yeah. It's
That's
my
good.
friend.
That's cool. So, what other kinds of liability insurance, not just California, but nationally across the US, what other kinds of insurance can small businesses take advantage of?
I mean, I think everyone should be, particularly if you're self-employed, should be self-insured for long-term disability.
Okay.
It's one of the most common things that I see is that if you are if you're living off your income and something happens to your income, you need to replace it. Because and that is particularly true for women who are more likely to experience disability during their income producing years. And not because we get pregnant, but because we get things like rheumatoid arthritis more readily. So it's important to cover what happens if I lose my income.
Yep.
And the reality with disability insurance is that it doesn't cover everything. So it'll, if a great policy will cover 60 to 70% of your earnings.
Oh.
And so if you have a history of chronic illness in your family, if you are a cancer survivor, if you have all sorts of other things that could lead you to this, or could lead you to having a disability event, or if you're the sole earner in your family, it is really, really important to cover your buns.
Absolutely. Oh man, that's brilliant. But that begs the question. So I've heard of umbrella policies. What do those do compared to other types of liability? And obviously that's something different from the long-term disability.
Yeah, they are. And just long-term disability is different from long-term care. Long-term care is for when you're in the nursing home.
Yeah.
Long-term disability is for when you're trying to pay your bills while you're 48.
Yeah, like now.
Yeah. So the umbrella insurance is really important, and it's also really cheap.
Yeah.
And what it does is if you live in some place where you have a high asset value, like California, if you live in the state of California and you own a home, you are going to exceed the maximum payout for your car insurance.
Oh.
So let's say you catastrophically rear end a Mercedes, and that guy lawyers up, and he looks at your, my dingy little used CRV, which is our fun family car.
Yeah.
And he goes, but you own a house.
Yeah.
And one of the things that umbrella insurance can do is it extends the protection of your other kinds of property insurance. Or someone comes over, eats it, knocks out all their teeth, and gets brain damage on your front porch. It extends your protection to stuff like that. And the worst case scenario is they go after your really big assets, or they come after your business.
Right.
And so umbrella policies cover personal liability. So they don't cover like workers' comp, or, your inventory gets stolen or flooded or whatever, but they cover like stuff that happens to you personally. Libel, someone decides you've committed libel, they'll go after you for that.
Yeah.
And they're really cheap. I think I have $1 million policy for like $400 or $500 a year.
Yeah, I know that they're cheap. I had one years ago, and I paid, it was a long time ago, but it was like $100.
Yeah. It's not much at all. And you can bundle them with the car. I have mine through Geico because I have all my car insurance through Geico. So they're very cheap to bundle. But then commercial liability is different, and commercial liability is based on it'll cover different things based on what type of business you have. So there's specialized e-commerce, like business liability insurance or commercial umbrella insurance. And it's worth looking into what's the best fit based on how big is your business, how much inventory are you holding? If you're drop shipping from somewhere else, that's different from if you have a jewelry store.
Right.
I'm gesticulating to my office like there's actually jewelry in here.
I could see it. I could see the cases. I could see the lighting. I could see everything.
Me too. I love the bling. I love the bling. So it's worth doing a little research, but increasingly there's small business insurance that pops up on a niche basis, or commercial umbrella insurance. Okay. And so sort of pricing out what provides you enough coverage based on what assets you have personally and what assets you have within your business, can give you a little bit of coverage that would also kind of isolate you in an LLC. And
so it's really, it's based on your liability though. It's based on, what are the assets that you're protecting? So if, I'm selling, let's say I'm selling apparel, and somebody buys a shirt and they go to the gym and they're wearing my shirt and they, get stuck on a machine, and we're in a litigious society. So
Yep.
they sue me because of the shirt that they got caught on,
Yep.
like,
Fun times.
right. Yeah. But that could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's commercial liability.
Yeah.
Or commercial. Yeah.
Commercial liability.
Commercial
liability or commercial umbrella. They can sometimes be used interchangeably. So it's just worth looking at the specifics of the policy.
But it's not really expensive.
Mm-mm.
And it's just there as a buffer, just in case. I mean, I carry a lot of insurance, so I believe in insurance, and I'm like monthly, my insurance bills are outsized, but if something happened, I'm fine.
It's one of those things where the structure of the risk that, finance people think about probabilities.
Yes.
And like what you pay in.
Yeah.
And like, it's a slim probability you'll need it. But if you need it and you don't have it, it destroys businesses, and it destroys personal finance too. Right. Because sometimes if they can't get enough out of your business, they'll come after you personally. Mm-hmm. So it helps to be covered. And a lot of those policies, one thing it's worth checking on is they cover lawyer fees.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can see.
I just scared you. I can see the fear on your face.
I'm terrified. Yes. Like, I have a ton of insurance and now I need more. Thanks.
No, sorry. No. It's, I put a lot of effort into organizing my insurance, making sure it covers what I want. Yeah. I think one other thing just to mention as an aside on insurance is that, housing prices spiked in the last year, and most houses in terms of their replacement value are underinsured.
Yes.
So you wouldn't be able to get your house back.
Right.
Like to the way you wanted it in this market, with inflation like it has been. So it's worth reviewing if your replacement cost coverage is where it should be.
So how about insuring things like business assets, like, inventory? You're running a store,
commercial liability.
That's commercial liability. Okay. Yeah. All right. Great. Good. So what other kinds of finance and a lot of times with the people that I'm working with, they're starting off, they're excited. They've got this, idea. They're starting their store. I help them with their traffic, and growing from there. The second set of problems that they run into are capital management, getting enough money so that they can get enough inventory to grow. Yeah. That's usually round two of the problems. So where do people get more, like business loans? Those are good.
I mean, everyone I know who's done it, and this is a small N, has worked with local banks. And my experience in personal and my own business finance is that the local banks and the regional banks are much more interested in working with people who have small businesses, because their products and the way they underwrite risk is kind of more tuned to that level, rather than like the Citibanks and the Chases who are like, why are you in my office? Yeah. So I think for small business, I like regional and local banks. I think that you can do better there. There's a million financing options, and I don't do corporate finance, but I think that the important thing is, to anticipate those moves. Yeah. Right. Because they're step change moves. You don't get to like slowly ramp to Black Friday.
No,
right?
You don't.
you get
just
one
so don't do that. Right. Exactly. It's like you're approaching the cliff. It's January 14th. You're approaching the cliff and you don't see it yet because Q4 just feels like it's forever away. But right. Yeah, it's there every year.
It is. And so I think that like starting the planning early and working with a business accountant who is interested in having a dialogue with you. There are a ton of accountants. There are a ton of financial advisors or business managers who will just take it off your hands. Yeah. And I find that to be very problematic because like, you don't know what's going on. It's not that whether they're trustworthy or not. It's like, do I understand closely enough about my business to see opportunity in it?
Yes. Yeah.
And And so I think that, interviewing bookkeepers and accountants such that you can have conversations with them about, and to be honest, they love this stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like so much sexier than like doing taxes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like planning, like cash management, cash flow management, inventory management. They find that stuff really sexy if you've got the right one,
Right. So that's a clue. Interview some accountants, and whoever looks like they're having fun answering your questions, choose that one, right?
Exactly. And I think
All
the
of
same with
these.
bookkeepers. Bookkeeping is a real pain in the patookus, but someone who is excited about cash flow is a win, a
Right.
huge win.
Today's episode is sponsored by Schema app for Shopify. Connect with customers at the beginning of their buying journey. Adding structured data to your Shopify store helps search engines better understand your website. This increases the chance of customers finding and purchasing products and services like yours. Get started today at schemaapp.com, schemaapp.com. Again, for listeners, if you're in that beginning stage and you think, well, I'm not going to have to borrow money yet for capital, well, think about your growth trajectory. Where do you want to be in 6, 12, 18, 24 months? And so it doesn't hurt to start thinking about these things now, because we're already in Q3 2022 right now. I know, right?
But you just made me scared.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Oh, the passage of time.
Whew. Okay.
All right. We're all right. It's okay.
We're okay.
July 20th. So yeah, I mean, but you plan for these things and you don't accidentally grow to be $1 million or $2 million or $5 million business. Right. It's not an accident.
No, it's not an accident. And I think to your point, when you said 6 months, I was like, damn, that sounds fast, particularly in a world where supply chains, you have to get the financing and then you have to get the product. Right. And supply chains are slow and like weird right now.
Yes, they are.
So it's, I think the planning is even more important. And just to speak on the economy for a second, like our economy is not going to iron out for at least another 18 months.
Yes.
So we've got to be really planful over, when you were speaking about 6 months or a year, 6 months or 12 months or 2 years, I was like, the 2-year time frame is really the time frame. You got to make your season this year, but you got to start planning for next year, like now.
Thank you for saying that. I've been telling people that for so long. Like, you think it's 2022 right now and you think it's summer, but actually it's next fall. So, that's kind of the thinking when you're in the back room in the office. In the front of the house, where you have your display, if you've got a brick and mortar, or how you put things on the store, that's right now. And, maybe in the summer you're selling school clothes or whatever, but, it's in the back office, it's got to be a much longer view.
Well, and I think that speaks to, this isn't something we talked about talking about, but it inspired me. Like, it speaks to the difference in who you have on your team. Yeah. Having your front office with hustle, who just love getting stuff sold.
Yeah.
There's a certain, I know because I was raised by one of them, that there is just a real verve for that. And that's a really different skill set from someone who's going to sit and do 2-year cash flow planning with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Those are both people you need on your team, but they're really, really different skills and different mentalities. Yes,
it absolutely is. And sorry, I'm looking down, I'm writing notes while you're talking, but front of the house, I mean, no matter what kind of, like, if you're online or offline or both, you should be both. Please use the internet. It's 2022. Just like how you're doing business, that whole thing is wrapped around what does it look like, and then what's the function, under the surface. And I mean, we do all kinds of neat things. I don't know if you'll approve of this as a money person, but we do pre-sales.
I love pre-sales.
Awesome. Good. Thank you for saying that, because,
Oh no,
my
many
inventory is
people
coming.
hate getting the money before you ship the product.
Oh, I know. It's a sin.
Or even
It's
carry
terrible.
the product. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, no, pre-sales are good. Pre-sales are really good. And like, that's one of the magic things that we do, is, all right, well, the stuff's coming. And logistics, yes, nightmare since about, 15, 18 months ago, that nightmare. But, sell the stuff and develop the relationship with the customer so that you can nurture that lead, nurture the pre-sale. And then, you've got cash. I mean,
I think the other thing with pre-sales, I mean, I love the cash, but the other piece that's wonderful about it, I'm a knitter and I'm like a serious crazy knitter. And in niche product areas, there's a lot of relationship building. And
yes.
what a pre-sale does is it gives you this roadmap for building a relationship with your customer that deepens their lifetime value by a lot, because they become fangirls who only want to watch your yarn.
That's
so
right.
It's, I love so many things about pre-sales.
Yeah. I'm so grateful that you said that, and that I feel so validated in like everything that I've been saying last few years. Pre-sale, definitely don't be afraid of that, because, at the basis, all businesses, relationships. So you got their money, foster that relationship, and they will love you while they're waiting, and waiting is okay.
Right.
And then they'll buy more later.
Totally. And when they get their stuff, they'll be so excited. I read this thing that they'll talk about it. They'll get their stuff, they'll talk about it, it'll go on socials. It has the like sort of splatter effect that you're looking for. Yeah. I read this thing about vacations, that a lot of the utility that people get out of vacations is anticipating it, not actually being on vacation. And like, that is so true for me. And pre-sales have sort of the same function, which is that they get, if you do it right, if you don't just like take the money and disappear, like, then you get this opportunity to like foster the anticipation value and the unique feelings. And there's really not as many ways to do that. Like, people have that around annual sales, like Prime Day or Black Friday. They have that same sort of anticipatory excitement, but a pre-sale can generate that at any point in the year.
Oh, yes. Create your own Black Friday, a couple of other times of the year. So that way you can have spikes in business.
That's true.
You can control. And then you've got, an influx of cash where you've pre-sold a whole bunch of stuff and new people on your list that you can sell to, and develop relationships with.
And it's worth thinking about like when your customer base has cash and when they don't.
Yeah.
So it's, I think that we don't think enough about the tax year and how it impacts income taxes. So most people get a refund. Yeah. And so April and May is like a hot time for money. January and February, as we all know, you can't get a nickel out of anybody. But having events that in my sales marketing career, we've called them compelling events, like generating a compelling event.
Yes.
When people have money because they've just gotten their tax refund, or they're, not spending extra on childcare because it's the summer or whatever. And it'll vary based on like, I remember when I was young and worked in New York, for some people, it was like, everybody got their bonus in January. And it just went bonkers in the city.
Yeah.
But so whatever your customer niche is, tacking your events to that, that income flux, benefit you a lot.
Right. So part of that is know your niche, know your customers, and segment.
Oh God.
On that, because you've got segments of the market. Some of your customers have kids. Some of your customers don't have kids. Some of your customers, like, how can you, and slice and dice your list based on the segments of what's going on for that particular group. And
absolutely. I think personas, and I like having really rigorous personas, and having really rigorous segmentation, and it takes time, it's a pain in the buns to do, but it gives you the most granular insights that help you find money. I have found so much money just digging around in a CRM to see what I could see,
Yeah.
or talking to people, just calling up random people to say, hey, I run thus and such. I would love to hear about you and like where this fits into your life.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love begging people to find, like, what, you've got all this inventory here and you can't sell it. Well, we sold all the best colors, or we sold all the most popular sizes, but you've got all the stuff. Well, who else bought that size or a matching color in the past? There's your segment right there. You can make that, and you can email them, or you could send them postal mail, because nobody else is mailing.
Nobody does that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that in postal mail, you get the opportunity to break out visually, right? Like you can't not see it. You have to get it out of the mailbox and take it to the garbage. You've got a moment there that you don't get with email.
That's right. Yep. Oh, brilliant. Good. Well, we have gone far afield from I know. I love these conversations, because there's always an organic, like something happens, and I'm always delighted, and I'm especially delighted today. So, I'm trying to think. I don't have a lot of single moms or single women in my group, but I know that is a love of yours.
It is. I think that there's a lot of people. Let me just speak to generally what is going on for single moms and single women that applies a little bit more broadly.
Yes.
In this year is different because from the last couple of years, because the stimulus has gone away, the child care tax credit is gone back down to, its measly pre-pandemic proportions. And so a lot of households are taking a like $3,000 post-tax, so like $5,000 or $4,000 pre-tax hit in their income.
Yeah.
And so I think we're facing very high inflation, as everybody knows. Our supply chains are a hot mess, and there's a lot of talk about recession, and nobody really knows how it's going to go. This economic environment looks totally different from anything the Fed has ever seen in the past, right?
Yes.
We have super, super high employment. We have stronger employment than we did 6 months ago by like a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's a really funky environment, and it's going to continue being a funky environment. It's an important time to be conservative and planful.
Yes.
And I think that's true whether you are a single mom with kids, whether you are a family trying to, build your life on the back of a business, whether you are a single person of any gender, getting ready to go out there and crush it and make a change in your life. You being mindful about like, what is your plan to finance your rent, and do the lifestyle choices you've made support what you want to do?
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. All right. So question on the back of that is, how about e-commerce as a side hustle? That's another kind of insurance, is having a side business or something you can do. Doesn't have to be e-commerce, could be information marketing, blogging, whatever. And I've got resources to help people with that. So, let me know if you don't want to do e-commerce. I've got people who can help with these other things. Like being a professional blogger is no joke. If you can write, blog, you can make money at it.
Yeah, you can make a lot of money. It is no joke. I've built 1 million visitor blogs before, and it is hard. And it's a lot harder this year than it is 10 years ago.
Well, and that's only going to get harder because there's just, content everywhere. So that's the competition.
You have to be really good now.
Yeah.
I think e-commerce as a side hustle is awesome. I think there's so many ways you can build a channel for low costs that you couldn't 10 years ago. Like when I built my startup in 2007, we built the whole damn thing from scratch because there was no Shopify.
Oh, right. Yeah.
There was no Shopify. I was like excited to have my own domain name through Google.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's the what we call the barriers to entry are low.
Yes.
So you can set up an inexpensive site with a lot of inventory. You can pre-sell stuff to see what works. You do a lot of market testing to see what's gonna find value. I always say that when it comes to side hustles, you should match what you want to get out of it financially with the type of business or work that you're doing. So if you need cash right now, maybe starting a big e-commerce company where you have to go buy a bunch of inventory and figure a bunch of stuff out is not the right MO. Maybe doing a little Instacart on the side can drive a little dollars. But if what you're looking for is a 5 or 10 year plan to build something really big that replaces your life, your day job, that could be a really great fit. And you don't mind the cyclicality of it, because let's be real, it's cyclical. So the other piece is that I am always in favor of diversifying income, particularly for single parent or sole breadwinner families, because there's a lot riding on what you do. And we're not seeing it right now, but at any time people can lose their jobs. Industries change, regions change, regulations change, politics within your office change. And so having a second income is great, because it's so much easier to say, I'm going to ramp this up and turn it into something that's kicking off twice as much money versus, or I'm going to take it twice as many hours, even if you're doing gig work, than it is to start something brand new from square one.
Yes.
And so it really reduces risk for people in their personal finance and personal lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Years ago, back when I was trying to be shy and I was trying to be an extreme introvert, and I bought the lie, right? Get a computer, sit in a room all by yourself, and, make your computer an ATM. Well, that doesn't happen. And it doesn't. No. So I had to go out and work with people, because it turns out business is about people and relationships. So, that was key. But, the thing about having a business, I didn't want to have a business. I tried online poker. I tried, learning about day trading. I tried all kinds of things to avoid starting a business. But it turns out that the returns, having your own business, whether it's just a tiny little side hustle, just to test and see what you can do, or something you grow into millions or multiple millions of dollars, the profits of owning a business and the tax benefits of owning a business far outweigh anything else. And don't play online poker, because bots will get you.
I think the other thing is that that's hilarious. The other thing with owning a business is that what you have this year and the way the finances on it look this year are not going to be what it looks like in year 10, right? And I think it's really easy to compare people who are halfway through their race when you're like starting out in the starting blocks behind them. It can be very intimidating, but if you're starting out with an Etsy store and they're taking a big cut and you're limited on their platform, that's actually okay. You know what? That doesn't mean you're going to be there 3 years from now. Lots of people make jumps to take their businesses to the next level. And the most important thing is that you're learning about your customer at every step along the way.
Right, exactly. And there are multiple platforms. So if you're on Etsy, you can jump into Shopify at the same time. And then if you're not on Amazon yet, that's a viable, platform too, whether it's FBA or FBM, fulfillment by Amazon versus fulfillment by merchant. And, there are all kinds of ways to do these things, and lots of growth available in all of those.
I am a firm believer, and I don't want to undersell this, but I'm a firm believer in multiple income streams. It's really hard. I mean, I have had jobs where what I made in my day job, that was my quote unquote career, didn't cover my bills. And so I bartended at night. And, and I've taken side work to cover expenses while, to pay off my student loans or do other things. It's tough. It's tough, particularly if you have kids and other limitations on your time, wonderful, mucky limitations on your time.
Adorable little tax deductions.
Oh yes. Disease vectors. It's really, really hard. But I think the wonderful thing, given that it's 2023, and given that we live in a post-pandemic world where so many options have exploded, you can find stuff that fits with your lifestyle.
Yes.
I think there's no reason not to pursue it.
Instacart is, you brought up that example a few minutes ago. Instacart is a fantastic. The woman who brought my groceries last time, she said, "Thanks for using Instacart. I'm a teacher and it's summertime." I'm like, go you.
Yep.
It's great. And, it's just, there are so many opportunities.
The number of teachers I know who have Etsy stores.
Yeah.
Because you control that time.
Right. Absolutely. Or years ago, I needed to raise 10 grand, like fast. Nobody was coming to break my legs, but I needed 10 grand to we had a real estate deal that had gone bad, like bad to the tune of 2 30-yard dumpsters in the yard. I mean, that was a real estate deal that went bad. And so I needed 10 grand in a hurry. Well, I went on, what was I on? Upwork
or whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever it was that week. And, made 10 grand like that.
Yeah.
And, I was writing a lot and I don't have kids. So, I get it,
but people with kids even have side hustles. It's tough. I mean, I will say, as someone who got up at 5:30 this morning, it is there, those constraints are real, but once you kind of get into a flow and, you figure out the childcare situation, it can be doable.
I've seen people teach their children using their side hustle as part of that, not homeschooling. I'm not even talking about homeschooling. I'm talking about, what do you do when you explain to your kid what you're doing? Well, first of all, please do explain to your kid what you're doing, because
absolutely.
It's an amazing opportunity to talk about money and relationships and, responsibility and,
I mean, I can't, you're making me a little like teary, because that's the house that I grew up in, right? We were put to work the second we were capable of doing anything. And it was not optional. It was what we did as a family. At dinner time, we talked about pricing. The mantra in our family is never pay full retail for anything.
Absolutely. Yes.
And because we talked about the new product line came in and it's going to be priced at thus and such and such. And that's crazy, or that's really cheap, or that, and it is, when I look back as someone who's had a successful business career and who has a sister who's had a very successful business career, and we've both been entrepreneurs. I look back and the greatest gift my mom gave me was including me in her business. That's and not lying to me about when she had a card table set up in her bedroom and that was her office. And, she was in there every night after dinner, plowing away while we were doing homework at the kitchen table.
Yep.
And I remember there were moments she couldn't pick me up from school, but I also remember watching her work hard and teach me things. And it was the greatest gift she gave me. And I support everybody who's doing that very difficult path.
That's so awesome.
She ate some really bad dinners that I cooked when I was 10.
Go
very graciously.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. And I think that's a good spot to end on for today, because otherwise we're in danger of doing a 3-hour episode, because I can just talk to you forever. So I will invite you back. We'll do this some more. We'll do it again. We'll do other topics, and this will be great. So
that sounds great, Amy. It's been so fun.
Ton of fun. And I just so appreciate you saying yes to coming on. So Claire's site is askflossie.com. Is there a story behind Flossie, by the way? Because that's
Flossie is my grandmother's name.
Oh, nice.
That's great. And she was born into very extreme poverty. She was my mom's mom. She was born into very, very extreme poverty. She had 4 daughters. She worked her way through college and worked her way to independence, because she was one of 11 kids. And started her career, quote unquote, at 17, sleeping in the back of the restaurant she worked in. She slept in the, in the storeroom under her coat. And she was such an inspiration to me, not because she was so hardworking, but because of the quality of her relationships. And I think that is the core of everything that is missing for women in personal finance. Is that we need to recognize that we are welcomed and we are here. And, she was throwing parties at 85, and she passed away, at the end of her days, a very, very wealthy woman in terms of like her personal richness.
That's awesome. That is great. And you just said something really important. Business is equal opportunity. I
Yes.
truly believe that. And in my group, we've got, race, gender, age, everything doesn't matter. Everybody's
Absolutely.
welcome.
It's, as a feminist, I am a diehard capitalist because it is one of the ways that we are going to achieve equality in this country.
Absolutely. Yep. It's going to be business all the way. So
Yep.
Claire, we're going to go down another road. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to turn off the recording, and
All right.
It's great. Thank you. You've been listening to the Traffic Handler Podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. Get more at amybiddle.me. And until next time, go sell more stuff.